Okay, today we're going to talk about alcohol. And alcohol is, as it says up here, popular, right? It's the second most commonly used drug in the United States. The most commonly used drug, of course, is caffeine. And alcohol is produced via a natural process known as fermentation of anything that's got some kind of sugar, right? So sugar is converted via the action of yeast into alcohol and carbon dioxide. This is the process known as fermentation. And the type of alcohol that you actually end up with depends upon the type of sugar, the source of sugar, that the alcohol will be based on. So we have, for example, beer, which comes from grains, right? We've got wine, which is, of course, fermented from grapes. We have sake in Japan, which comes from rice. Shochu, which is rice with barley or potato. And in Korea, shochu, which comes from sweet potatoes. And now fermentation will actually continue until the alcohol content is about 15%. And then it'll stop. And the reason it stops is because the alcohol in the fermented liquid actually kills the yeast, so they can no longer continue the process of fermentation. So obviously, though, there are alcohols with a higher alcoholic or alcohol content. And these are achieved through the process, as your book describes, right, of distillation, where you have to get a still, where you boil off the alcohol in a series of glass tubes, right? It condenses and it drips out in a much higher concentration at the other end. So this distillation process, which if anybody's seen MASH, they had their own still, right, in the tent, is a source of hard liquors. Another concept that's related to alcohol is that of proof. And this is a British Army term, actually, which was based on an old custom in the British Army of testing alcoholic content. They would pour spirits on gunpowder and try to light it. And if the alcoholic content of what they poured was at least 50%, the gunpowder would light. So burning, right, the gunpowder was 100% proof that you had at least 50% alcohol. So 100 proof equals 50% alcohol. So you get up to 200 proof if you have pure alcohol. Now, drinking alcohol is ethyl alcohol, right? This is the stuff that you get in beer and wine and harder liquors. Methyl alcohol contains only one carbon. Again, ethyl has two carbons. Methyl alcohol contains one carbon, and it's not drinkable. It's actually the basis for products like antifreeze, solvent, some fuels, for example, and it's also poisonous because the liver, when it breaks it down, presumably through the first pass effect, if you were to actually try to drink methyl alcohol, converts it into formic acid and formaldehyde, so you can pretty much pickle your tissues. And methanol is usually actually added to ethyl alcohol, to ethanol, that's used for industrial purposes. Like, for example, fuel. Ethanol is a very popular fuel these days. So what's interesting is the reason they add this poisonous methyl alcohol to the ethanol is to make the fuel at the pump undrinkable, and also then to avoid alcohol taxes, which would be levied if it were pure ethanol. There's also an alcohol with 3 carbons called isopropyl alcohol, or rubbing alcohol, and this is actually used for various purposes.